Hello, and welcome to this very, very quick sneaky peek into a part of the Rethinking Education Conference on the 23rd of September at Parliament Hill in North London. We, the gang you see here, are a couple of us from the panel who are going to be in the Rethinking Behaviour section. So if you don't know, my name is Adele Bates. I'm a behaviour and education specialist, keynote speaker, and author of Miss I Don't Give a Shit, Engaging with Challenging Behaviour in Schools. I'll be hosting this panel and giving you a keynote at the start of the day. And on the panel with me, I have Tony and Kat, and there's also Rachel who couldn't make it today. Tony and Kat, can we start off first with you introducing yourselves, and then we will get to rethinking some behaviour.
Hi, I'm Tony Meehan. I am a former head of a pupil referral unit, retired in 2017. I now work with families where there's child-to-parent violence and developing relational approaches in schools, also working with very challenging pupils to help them avoid exclusion.
Thank you, Tony.
Hi there. Thanks, Tony. My name's Kat. I'm a behaviour consultant in secondary educational settings. I'm author of a book, The Excludables, From Mainstream Classroom to Prison Education, and I'm still part-time a teacher.
Yes, excellent. So what I've already noticed in our panel is that we are pretty much on the front line. We've all worked in those kind of alternative provision kind of spaces, the pupil referral units. I mean, I don't know about you, but I worked with a kid once who was excluded 6 times. Now, if that doesn't tell you there's something wrong with the system, I don't know what does. So let's kick it off with, why are we rethinking behaviour? Why is that coming up at this time particularly?
Do you want to go first, Tony?
Okay. I think, well, as I said to you earlier on before we started, I think I'm sad that we're even having this conversation, but I think what seems to be happening with the system, the education system, is we're doubling down on approaches, behaviorist approaches that don't work for a growing number of pupils. You described there a pupil who was just excluded 6 times. I could give you many, many stories along similar lines. One of the things I found working in a pupil referral unit is you had young people who had been through the entire system of behavior management approaches. They didn't work, they failed, and they came to approve, and we were supposed to do something completely different. And actually that's where we did, because we did develop relational approaches that had a big impact. So, you know, I'm not giving you a straight answer to your question for now, but we will in the course of the conversation.
Thank you, Tony. And, you know, you've picked up on something that I see a lot, because I get to work with a lot of different schools across the country and in some foreign countries as well. And what I see is that the practice that goes on often in the pupil referral unit or equivalent is expected to be different. And yet, why are some of those practices not happening in mainstream? And often when I'm supporting a school, that's what I'm doing. I'm sharing practice. I'm sharing good practice. And what excites me is a lot of mainstream staff are thirsty for it. They want to help the kids. It's just that we're not given that in our training. Kat,
go
on.
For you to, like, I've just finished my doctorate on this, and one of the things, my findings is this, and it's blindingly obvious. What we do in a PRU is not actually preparing them for return to mainstream school.
No.
What we're doing in the PRU is nurturing, developing trust. We have young people coming to us who have been through the mill. Their lives are so grim in many cases. Punishment does not figure, like, in terms of how we understand punishment, and why would we? So we have to build trust, and that's a tough thing to do, because you're dealing with young people, in my experience, say with gang involvement, where, you know, for them to hand over trust to us adults who have been let down so often, blah blah blah. And I think what the key thing for us was, when you reach that level of trust, you see a change. All of a sudden, they switch into being children.
Yes.
They feel secure. And I'm talking about 15, 16-year-olds going to play, wanting to play, and feeling secure that they're not going to be judged every time they walk down the corridor, or they're not going to get a look. And I think sorry, I'm dominating here, but I'll just give you an example. One of the things we started in my crew was Monopoly, Friday afternoon.
Sounds dangerous, Tony.
I can tell you now, there was no cheating. 3 o'clock came and went, they were still there. 4 o'clock came and went, they were still there.
Wow.
It was had that sense of, this is where they felt secure. They could revert to being children instead of pseudo adults. I'll stop there.
Yes.
And
Kat, you've probably got a million things to pick up from there. Go for it.
Well, for 4 years, I ran an internal AP in a mainstream school, and we did chess. So as like it was an essential thing for the kids, and you came in and you were taught and you played, and some of the calmest times. And not only do they need that time to play, when you're talking about physical and emotional regulation, they needed that time in their day to be calm, because calm was not a typical state for some of these children. So yeah, I think I'm all for Monopoly, chess, do it. So in terms of why do I think we need to rethink behaviour now? I think because the environment has changed, and it's not just the pandemic. There was a decline before the pandemic, and the cost of living crisis is huge. So I spend a lot of time looking at data and trying to think about not just individual behaviour, but systems. And the most reliable relationship that we have when it comes to across our sector, certainly in mainstream, primary and secondary education, relates to income. And how we unpick that, whether that's related to stress, whether that's related to scarcity, that relationship is almost a perfect correlation across our system when you look at suspensions, when you look at permanent exclusions. And so knowing that we've had years of austerity, knowing the impact that has had on services, on support for families, on activities for children, as we've just been saying, and knowing that stress has gone up and scarcity has gone up, it is no surprise to me that suspensions are now the highest they've been in a decade. And the gap, I looked at this, it's on my Twitter profile if anyone wants to see the graph, but the gap between children who've been eligible for free school meals and their suspension rate last year, and the suspension rate of children who haven't, the gap is at its widest that I've ever seen. It's at its biggest. So we have a stretched system, and behaviour is really feeling it, and staff in schools are really feeling it. So yes, we are going to have to adapt.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kat. I love that you bring those stats in. Please bring more of those on the 23rd as well. They are so, because they give us that bigger picture. And I think that I know that I'm guilty sometimes when we are the kind of practitioners who work in a way that is so heavily based on building the trust and the relationships, to also have that wider perspective of what's going on kind of statistically, countrywide, etc. It can be really, really helpful to see, actually, this isn't just, and this is something I'm coming up against, a lot of schools and a lot of staff thinking it's just us. Oh, it's because of our kids. It's because of our community. It's because our head teacher's gone soft. It's because the governors aren't being disciplined enough. I'm hearing this a lot. And another piece that I often do is sharing that it isn't just you, actually. This is a systemic thing that's going on. And I'm interested, I don't think it's for now, Kat, but maybe for on the day, that idea that this isn't just because of lockdown. This has been coming since before then. So just kind of sweeping over to the other side to close up, if we are rethinking behaviour, and this is something on the day, as the audience, you are going to be able to ask questions. We're going to be doing some interactive activities. It is a discussion as much as we can do. So one of the things that I'm always interested in is, imagine that you had no limits whatsoever, and answer this in 2 minutes, whilst hopping on one foot, why not? What is
Tony, you're going first.
what is your vision for behaviour? If we were going to completely rethink how behaviour is approached in education, what does it get to look like?
I think that we got a problem with our understanding of what a relational approach to education looks like. I think there is a narrative put out there that it's just a teacher gets punched in the face and we sit down around circle time and have a little cozy chat and then send them back to lesson, which is absolute nonsense. And I think we have to get to grips and create a much more compelling argument about what relational approaches look like, and be unafraid to say that. And this is where I will chuck in my work as an NVR practitioner, nonviolent resistant practitioner, because at the Peru we had to work out what it looked like, and it is different, and it's not soft, and it's having hard conversations with young people about and genuinely working with them through why they've done X, Y, Z, and unpicking what's behind that. Now, people will say, but we don't have time to have this conversation with all of our children. Well, actually, the cost if we don't, and this happens, is staggeringly high, and we're then into this notion that you double down, triple down, quadruple down on behaviorist approaches, which ultimately will result in a child being excluded. Did I stick in my 2 minutes?
And ding, ding, ding. Thank you, Tony. Yes. Oh, there's so much I want to pick up on. Come on the 23rd of September in North London, Parliament Hill. You can get your tickets at rethinking-ed.org. To pick up on this conversation. Kat, your 2 minutes begins now.
Yeah, no, thanks. Firstly, Tony, I think there's some excellent points in there. And I think that cost is really important. I think we've got to make things realistic for normal human beings to be able to manage. And I think what's fascinating about talking about that is we have to commit to what you're going to put down. Because it's schools who have cohorts that are struggling, where the stress that surrounds them and has surrounded their development is really high. You have to be willing to put down. So my rethinking point would be, just as one, let's stop copying each other. What I see is a lot of schools swing. There's like a pendulum, and this is true of the justice system as well, if I'm honest, from trying to be punitive to trying to be restorative, and back just clutching at straws. And it's like we have this line where you go, well, here's the approach for alternative provision over here, and here's the approach for mainstream, and these two should be wildly different. Well, context, some of the ways they are going to be very different, but actually you've then got all of this mainstream that's trying to act like it's exactly the same. And that's something which I think we really haven't had a good enough conversation around, and we should unpick.
How about we do that on the 23rd of September at Parliament Hill, the Rethinking
Sounds good.
Education Conference. So do come along, come and find us in the Rethinking Behaviour Corner, as I've called it. I don't know if it's officially that on the programme. I am hosting a keynote also around rethinking behaviour, and then you come into the panel and we unpick this together and we get those discussions going. Thank you so much, Kat and Tony, for being here today. We've also got Rachel W. and Honey, the therapy dog, who should be with us live on the day as well. So grab your tickets. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.